Hey everyone, Derek Ryan here. This is a little tip just to help you with your percussion. It served me very well so far and hopefully will also serve you. Just a little note on this video, I made a rookie mistake since this is my first YouTube upload of this sort, and there's a little bit of phasing on the actual vocals due to coming in from two sources at once. I'll be better in the future. Hopefully it doesn't interrupt your enjoyment too much, and I hope you are able to make good use of this. I just would like to show off a little feature I've been using a lot recently in Logic. It's new as of about a year ago, I think, whenever they came out of the sort of new version of Logic Pro X. They introduced something called the QuickSampler, which ends up being really, really nice for percussion and sort of textures. And you can use textures from a lot of different sources this way, which is one of the reasons I like it. If you've ever used Recycle from back in the day, it works very similarly in the way that I use it. But for me, this has completely replaced Ableton in my workflow as kind of a way to get warped percussion from other sources that you wouldn't expect. So let's just jump right in. So I have a basic template that I use for myself here to create melodies on the fly and just kind of jot down ideas. Just basically has a kick, a snare, hi-hat, lead, and a pad bass and some effects in there just to get a vibe going. So I'm going to use that just for kind of to get us going a little faster here because I want to focus exactly on this QuickSampler. So create a new instrument, and this QuickSampler is the business, and I will show you why. So in trance, obviously, you have your like a good snare and a good hi-hat are very essential to making any trance track work, but you have to have other percussive elements, and some of it's a running hi-hat line, sometimes it's other elements, some kind of little percussive thing, but a lot of I tend to like little techie grooves going on in the background, a little action in there kind of. So I am going to use this QuickSampler, which basically loads in a single audio sample and allows you to process that in some cool ways. I use a single mode pretty much for all these things, and I'm going to show you what I do with that. So let's load an audio file here. So it should go to my samples. Let's see, recent folders. Let's going to go to, start off here. So this is a Vengeance Electro house, sorry, not Electro, but Essential House. Things that, normally wouldn't necessarily be so suited for trance. We could try those, but actually I think that what I really want to go for is, so Blue Martin, these drum and bass artists, they actually have some really interesting textures in the loops that they have. And I think we can use them in some interesting ways to kind of make a texture here for like a trance groove. So let's go into music. That's not music loops. Drum loops here. Let's see what we got. That's kind of standard. Let's see some percussion. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. It also seems like it's suited for like a drum step track and not at all for like a trance track that we're making. Never fear. I bet we can do something with this. So let's just check it out. So classic mode, and one-shot mode will just play back the sample at different levels, which sounds cool, but it's not what we want. I'm going to go into slice mode, which basically takes each of the transients and puts a marker on it and maps them to the keyboard, so now you can play them in. So we can obviously use this just to even make a groove on its own, and just like to actually use the kind of kick and snare, but that would be more appropriate for the sort of drum and bass sounds that this is meant for. So instead, we're going to use this a slightly different way. And so I'm first going to high pass this because we are going to put in our own kick. In fact, I have one up here. So let me just cut off anything below. We probably don't need anything below 200 for this because even the mid-range isn't what we're going for here. So what I'm going to do next is just there's a way to, in this menu, they have a copy MIDI pattern, which is an essential feature that lets you take the mapping of these notes that they have there and translates them into some piano roll for us to play with here. So let's paste that in. It's pretty long. Let's see if we need the entire thing. I'll extend my kick out, although I'll mute it, and then let's just listen to this entire thing and see how much of it we need. So already it sounds very half-time and kind of spacey and strange, which may or may not work on its own. But we're going to edit this and make it kind of obey our commands, as it were. So first thing I'm going to do is to lock it to the beat. Swing isn't really good in 138 trance unless you're making a certain kind. If you want it to have that swingy feel, you might want to keep the feel of the groove, but for me, I think locking it in is probably the right thing to do because I want like a techie roll or something like that here. So Okay, so it's got some gaps in there and stuff like that that might need to be filled. Um, but overall, it's a cool texture. I'm not sure how it's going to do under a kick and snare. So let's add a kick under it. So it's not terrible, but it's not really doing anything intensely interesting right now. What I would like to add, though, is let's add a little delay to it and just see if that does the trick. And if it doesn't, we'll try something else. So let me see. I'm just going to add it a simple ping pong here, which will kind of delay the crap out of this. So that's cool. It's still got the halftime feel, so which is, I think, is a little bit much for this track right now because it's spacey, but it's almost too spacey, right? So let's kind of make a little groove out of this guy. What hits do we like out of here? First, the thing I'm going to actually try, though, is to see what happens if we change the pitch of this. So we got this pitch control on here, so you can get a lot of different vibes out of this one sample that you have here. That sounds a lot more like kind of deep and echoey, kind of where we got that. I think that's probably fine. We only really need to play with this part. Repeating lines are pretty good in trance anyway. So let's see if what we can do with this guy. Okay, so we have. So I kind of want it to like have a little bit of skip in there, like a bump, 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 bump. So let's try getting the skip in here. So it's not bad already, but let's do a little more arranging. So it's almost got a little too much delay on this thing, I think. The feedback's getting a little bit intense and everything on here, I think, for the vibe we want. Let's just lower that down a little bit. The one thing that's standing out to me is this guy. So let's take that out. So that can work. That's kind of got like a little bit of a trancey vibe to it. Let's just put a snare and a hi-hat under it and see how it sounds. How about that guy? Sounds good. Let's just record in a little bit of this. Hit Q to quantize it, kind of get it in place. Okay. And then let's get a hi-hat down. So there we go. Should be fine, although I might want more of an open hi-hat kind of feel here. And in case you're wondering what I'm using for this, I have sampler banks of some stuff from the Dave Parkinson sets, which are really, really useful for this sort of thing. There we go. So that's kind of vibe. It's pretty cool. And we can expand upon that by doing a couple of variations if we want later on. But basically, in our QuickSampler now, we just have this little rhythm that's made out of a drum and bass track that was actually chopped up and kind of used in a completely different way. I love making grooves like this because you get a lot of unusual results, and even if you're doing like a trance loop, if we were to cut up a trance loop and do it this way, we could make it sound very, very different than the original. So it's kind of a nice way to get some original grooves going with minimal effort. I mean, that took only a couple minutes to do. Just for a second example here, let's do a different kind of track. So instead of a trance track, I'm going to take this, slow it down to, how about 100, and do like a kind of a mid-tempo thing. Let's kind of get another instance of QuickSampler up here. Let's see. Instead of this now, since we're doing a mid-tempo thing, I could do drum and bass, but actually, drum and bass would fit something in this tempo a little too much because there's kind of a synergy between half-tempo, like hip-hop sort of stuff, and drum and bass anyway. So let's do something that's a little bit more off the wall. So let's go for actually house samples for this. which, you know, are probably going to be around, this pack is at 128, so let's look at house beats, see if we can find something. Didn't like that. Let's go and do it again. House beats. There you go, liked it that time. Let's do some interesting percussion here. So it's got kind of like the house roll in that. You could hear the, here, I'll play it so you can hear it. Kind of got like a nice like little rolling bongo line sort of thing going on there. So slice it up again like you've seen. I'm going to do the same thing where I chop the bass out, because usually when making sort of a percussion groove, I don't want the kicks or whatever in there. So let's take those out and just see how it sounds on its own. Oops. Let me grab the MIDI region. So again, go to this menu on the side, copy MIDI pattern. There we go. See how it sounds on its own. That sounds kind of like the source material still a little bit, right? It's kind of vaguely housey. I'm going to lock this in too. So select all these notes, Q for quantize. So that's still kind of normal on its own. Let's get a, like, I'll use the same kick and snare. I might pick something different normally when making this kind of track, but since we have them, let's use them. Let's just try something like that. It's super simple, but we can groove with it. So let's see. This is way too dubsteppy right now for the snare, I think, but let's see. There we go. Kind of nice. So right now, you're like, whoopee, we've just warped the loop. Congratulations, you can do that anywhere. So now let's start making use of some of the other features of this thing. So let's warp the pitch again on this guy. I like that down. It's kind of got like a classic hip-hop feel almost to it. So just to reference, the original is here. And then you got this -5 semitones. It's like this. It's kind of got like almost a rare groove sort of thing that I'm digging. So let's play with the length of these guys a little bit. So one thing, as you reduce the pitch on this, it'll actually make each individual hit a little longer, which you can use to your advantage to kind of lengthen things out. But at the same time, there's another thing we can do with it here. So this down here is the envelope for the volume of each slice. So right now we're playing each slice in its entirety as we go through. Let me solo this so we can really hear it. So every slice. Now if we take this and bring it down, then we'll kind of see the sound change and get shorter. There's a range of things in there that we can kind of do. So let's play with that over the groove and see what we like. It's full. Not bad. So there we go. I actually kind of like it there with its clipping off a little bit, but it lets a little bit of the body get through, although it's completely taste at this point. And essentially there we have it. We could kind of stop there and it's pretty decent sounding okay. It's kind of got like a groove to it, and it's one way to use a loop. At this point, I mean, there's other things you could do if you really wanted to go crazy. You could start shifting it, like what happens if we move it half a bar that way. Will that sound good? Will it sound bad? Let's find out. Actually sounds exactly the same. Let's try it here. So that's cool, except for the bang at the front, actually, because it's got the snare here. So let's replace that with a kick instead. Let's take find where the snares are, and there we go. Let's put them here. that last one's a snare. Let's make sure I'm actually getting this. So this is, I missed a note instead of hitting the kick. So that's cool. I mean, I actually like it kind of straight on better, I think, but it's an interesting technique to kind of move it around and see what you get. So just a quick little tip about something I do for percussion sometimes, and hope it's useful to you.